You're miserable because you tie your worth to outcomes you can't control. And that set you up to play a game that you can't win. And the problem is that in that game, you end up losing even when you win because your worth is hostage to the next deal, the next launch, the next clap. And you're only as real as the last scoreboard. You overdeliver because you think it's about pride. But in reality, you're trying to outrun the guilt. And that's imposter syndrome. And I'm talking about the real kind of imposter syndrome, not the stage jitters, not the butterflies. I'm talking about the quiet belief that you don't deserve the spot, that you don't deserve the money. You're waiting for the real pro to show up and expose you. And so you ask yourself, well, why do I feel that? Logically, you know, it's not because you're unqualified. You are. And it's not because you didn't earn it. You did. It's deeper than that. And it's probably something you're not ready to hear. You've outsourced your worth to outcomes, and then you built an identity around it to protect those outcomes. Now, every win tightens the chains. Here's something that no one talks about. Imposter syndrome has another side. It doesn't just make you doubt yourself. It also makes you stuck. And often it's in a job or a position that you don't even like in the first place. It usually happens in 5 steps. Let me show you. First, you start measuring yourself by results that you can't fully control. If the market smiles, you're winning. If the market frowns, all of a sudden you become nothing. Then you build a persona to keep those results coming. You become the closer, the optimizer, the one that always finds a way. You say yes to work that proves that persona right and no to anything else that threatens it, even if the no kills something true in you. And then success arrives. Numbers go up, people clap, but success feels hollow. It's kind of like borrowing clothes. Good fit, wrong person. You celebrate like you're supposed to, but you're already thinking about the next thing. Then pressure mounts and joy disappears. You had offers, features, and a lot of hours. And it's not because you love what you're doing necessarily. It's because if you slow down, it's almost like you're about to get caught. And so you're managing the feeling, but you're not building the life. And then step 5, one day, you look around and you realize that you built a machine that runs on fuel that you don't want to keep producing anymore. The brand, the team, the expectations, they're all bolted to an identity that doesn't fit you anymore. And actually, you realize it never belonged to you in the first place. And so you become successful, but yet you feel like you lost. And the most terrifying part is the suspicion that you are too deep to change course and that you'll have to live like this for another decade. So that's a trap. But I have good news for you because we can get out of it. You're just mismeasured and we can fix that. Everyone thinks imposter syndrome is just about self-doubt, about not feeling good enough. And although it's not wrong, this is just the surface level. The real cost of imposter syndrome isn't the doubt, it is the life that you built because of it. Stay with me, it's gonna make sense in just a minute. The problem is that if you secretly believe that you don't deserve your seat, you're gonna work twice as hard to keep it. And what happens when you do that? You'll say yes to things you don't even want. You'll build systems, businesses, and careers entirely just to justify being there. When you do that, you end up with a life that looks good on the outside but feels really miserable on the inside. And that's unfortunately the part that no one talks about. It forces you to keep proving who you are by living a life that wasn't yours in the first place. Back when I was building my real estate business, I didn't get it. I thought the problem was just that I wasn't enough. So instead of going to the bottom of why I felt like a fraud, I patched it with people. I hired sales guys. I hired marketing people. I hired SEO teams. And I did all of that out of fear instead of vision. And fear hires the wrong people. And so these hires actually widened the gap. They became the face, they became the voice, and they became the power. And looking back, it's pretty clear now that the bad hires were not the problem. They were a symptom of me outsourcing my worth to outcomes. Because I thought if sales keep coming, maybe I'll finally feel enough. But you can't outsource a wound, you can only bury it. And when you do, somehow, it always comes back bigger. And that's the way imposter syndrome locks you in. You don't just feel like a fraud, you build a life that proves fraud right. So how do you break the cycle? Well, it starts with changing the scale that you are measuring yourself on. Because right now, whether you realize it or not, you're grading yourself on a rigged scoreboard. So let me give you a few examples to prove that point. If you're in real estate and I ask, what are your investors paying you for? You'd probably tell me the returns, the profit margins. If you're a consultant and I ask you, what are your clients paying you for? You probably say the results, better systems, more revenue, growth. If you're a top executive and I ask you, why does your company keep you around? You probably say the promotion that you earned, the projects you delivered, the stock price that you helped move even. And you'll be right, but only on the surface, because outcomes get people in the door, but they're not why they stay with you. Real estate investors don't put money with you because you have 10% ROI. Like anybody can get that. They invest with you because they trust that if the market tanks, you won't disappear. If a deal goes sideways, you're not going to let them drown. You'll fight for them. You'll pick up the phone at 2 a.m. That's integrity. Your consulting clients don't stay with you because every project is a home run. They stay with you because they know you'll bring clarity when they're lost and that you'll solve problems that nobody else can. That's insight. And companies don't keep employees just because the stock price goes up all the time. They keep them because they show up steady under pressure, because people trust them in the room when it's on fire. That's leadership. I want to be clear, this only became obvious in my consultancy, not that long ago. I dreaded sales calls even when people sought me out. But that knot in my stomach wasn't about the call itself, it was the voice of the imposter syndrome. And it was telling me, what if you can't actually deliver the outcome that they're paying you for? What if their revenue doesn't grow? What if their identity shift doesn't stick? And that's because I was still tying my worth to their results, to outcomes that I could influence, but I could never fully control. And the shift only really happened when I realized that they were not hiring me for guaranteed outcomes. They were hiring me for my unique ability to diagnose the invisible. They were investing in the certainty of a correct diagnosis so they could stop wasting energy on the wrong solutions. My job was to deliver the diagnosis with 100% integrity. Their job was to execute. And that's when imposter syndrome for me didn't just quiet down, it became irrelevant at this point. Because how can you be a fraud when you're promising to deliver something that is inherently unchangeably yours? I wasn't selling a miracle, I was selling my lens. And I can always guarantee the quality of my lens. The outcome, the result, the shift, that was just a byproduct of me delivering the service. That's the power of using the true scale. It rewires your entire way of showing up. It ties your worth to the values and the qualities that you always bring to the table, no matter what the scoreboard says. Now, I can already hear you muttering, but I just can't flip the scale. My performance is revenue. That's literally my job. And you'd be right, some roles are fixed. If you're a sales executive, your boss might not really give a shit about your integrity. They might just care about the numbers, and that's the scoreboard that you're judged on. But here's some food for thought. If your worth is forever tied to a scoreboard that you can't control, imposter syndrome will never leave, and you'll always feel like you're one bad quarter away from being exposed. So what then? If you can't change the scale, you might need to change the game entirely. Because the game you're in right now only rewards you for outcomes you can't fully control. But there are other games where what you can bring is the value, where the true scale isn't the side note, it's the whole thing. And I think that's the bigger choice that most people avoid. They keep playing on the rigged scale until it breaks them, until they burn out. And they could build a new game around an identity that they can always trust. What if you built your business, or your entire life for that matter, on the true scale, where what you delivered wasn't fragile outcomes, but the unshakable qualities you bring every time you show up? Hiring wouldn't be a gamble anymore. Selling wouldn't feel like a lie. And the way you carry yourself would probably change as well, because you stop delivering out of guilt. You stand firm and steady because you keep delivering what you promised. Would imposter syndrome even exist if you knew, without a question, that you were showing up in full alignment with who you are? When you stop measuring yourself on the outcomes you can't control, you start building on the qualities you never lose. And the deeper point is this: it's not just about outcomes or qualities, it's really about identity. Because once you change the scale that you measure yourself on, you also change the identity that you're operating from. And when the identity changes, everything else follows.